Committee will come to order. Well, I'm honored to preside as chairman of this committee for the first time today. And I'm looking forward to working closely with my new ranking member, Rob Portman, who I see on the screen here, and with all of my colleagues to tackle the really tough challenges that our nation is now facing. I'm also excited to welcome our committee's two newest members, Senator Alex Padilla. Alex, great to have you with us here today and on the committee going forward. Alex is from California, and he's joined by Senator John Ossoff from Georgia. We're welcome you again and thrilled to have both of you on this committee. This committee has a long-standing tradition of bipartisanship, of coming together to get things done, and given the many serious challenges facing our nation, we have a lot that we need to accomplish. I look forward to working with everyone on this committee to find common ground, to find common sense solutions, and to strengthen our national security, and also to ensure that government is working efficiently and effectively for all taxpayers. Today, our committee is considering the nomination of Ms. Neera Tanden to serve as Director of the Office of Management and Budget. Welcome, Ms. Tanden, and certainly good to see you with us here today. And it's wonderful to see your family. I had an opportunity to meet them earlier, and it's great that they're all here to support you, not just today, but in the years ahead as well. Also, congratulations on your historic nomination, and thank you for your willingness to serve this great nation of ours. The Office of Management and Budget, or OMB, plays a central role in developing and implementing the President's budget and policy agenda across the entire federal government. To put it simply, the Director of the OMB is charged with ensuring that every part of the federal government is effectively serving the American people. Ms. Tanden, this is a job that, let's say, is not easy, even in the best of circumstances. Once confirmed, you will step into this role while our country continues to grapple with a historic public health and economic crisis. However, after our conversations that I've had with you, I'm confident that your decades of experience in public service have prepared you to tackle this incredibly vital role within our government. You know firsthand the struggles of working and middle-class families in Michigan and across the country and the challenges that they face every single day. Your experience has taught you how much federal government can help support hardworking families and create opportunities. In fact, you have devoted much of your career in public service to championing economic policy that benefits all Americans. We're nearly 1 year into dealing with a pandemic that has decimated our economy and the livelihoods of too many Americans. We need strong leadership at OMB to coordinate additional support families across our country need. They need emergency relief, they need vaccines, and they need guidance to help swiftly and safely open our economy. As Director of OMB, you'll play a key role in steering our country towards national recovery. You also are going to be responsible for coordinating efforts to address many of the long-term challenges our nation faces, including protecting our cybersecurity infrastructure, growing domestic manufacturing jobs, and even fighting climate change. Communities in my home state of Michigan and across the country are also struggling to address widespread PFAS contamination. I hear from Michiganders every day about how exposure to these harmful chemicals are affecting their homes and their families. And once confirmed, you'll be responsible for coordinating the federal government's response to this monumental problem. You will also play a critical role in ensuring that taxpayer dollars are spent responsibly. That's why I appreciate your robust commitment to transparency, accountability, and working with Congress in a bipartisan manner. Given OMB's role at the center of the federal government, you will be charged with ensuring government is addressing the unique needs of communities of color and most vulnerable populations. You'll also be a key player in the effort to reinvigorate the federal workforce that has been decimated in recent years. Your perspective and your commitment will be critical to ensuring that OMB and the federal government is delivering for the American people each and every day. That is why you have received support from numerous organizations, such as the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and over 100 public health experts have written a committee in support of your nomination. And without objection, I will enter those letters into the record. Today's hearing is an important opportunity for me and my colleagues to have a thorough discussion about how you plan to lead OMB and how we can all work together in a bipartisan manner to address the very serious challenges facing our country. So, Ms. Tanden, thank you again for your willingness to serve and for being with us here today. And with that, I will turn the meeting over to Ranking Member Portman.
Thank you, Chairman Peters, and I appreciate your holding this hearing today. We have been looking forward to having Ms. Tanden before the committee. Let me start by saying welcome as chair. This is your first official responsibility as chair of this committee, and you mentioned earlier that we have a tradition of bipartisanship on the committee. That's mostly true, and in fact, you and I have worked on many issues together. One indication of our relationship, I suppose, would be that before we knew who was going to be in the majority in the Senate, you and I had a meeting. It was several weeks ago now. And whether it was going to be me as chair or you as chair, we agreed to a number of items on our policy agenda, much of which you have talked about this morning, and I will mention some of it. But our committee has this broad swath of responsibilities, a lot of which has to do with good government oversight, some of which has to do with our homeland security and our border. And there's always room for figuring out a way forward, as you and I have done a number of issues in the past. So I look forward to having the opportunity to work with you in your new role, and we will have our differences at times. We'll do so respectfully as we disagree, but we also have a great opportunity to work together with the other members of our committee. It's a strong committee, and I also welcome our two new members, Mr. Padilla and Mr. Ossoff. I think we have the opportunity here, again, with the membership of this committee to do a lot of good for our country over the next couple of years. At the hearing today, we will be hearing from Ms. Tanden. I appreciated our telephone call last week. Ms. Tanden, as a former OMB director, I know how incredibly important this role is. It's crucial that the director have a broad understanding, including of regulatory law and government management, since those are all responsibilities at OMB. Much like this committee, it has a broad swath of responsibilities. But you also, in this job, need to have a broad awareness of an array of policy issues that come before you because you have a coordinating role on so many of them. Because of that coordinating role, it's imperative that the director can work productively both within the administration, across agencies, and with the White House, but also with members of Congress on both sides of the aisle. Cooperation across the aisle is especially important as we confront several crises at once. One, of course, is we need to work together to address the COVID-19 pandemic, as we have previously. In fact, we've passed 5 legislative initiatives here over the last year in the United States Senate and in the House of Representatives, signed into law by the President, all of which were not just bipartisan, but strongly bipartisan. I'm discouraged that the current administration seems not to be interested in pursuing the bipartisan solution, but rather has moved ahead with the idea of what's called reconciliation, which would not require, in theory, working with Republicans. It's too bad, and I'm part of a group that helped put together the last $900 billion package, and part of the group that has made suggestions as to how we could work on a bipartisan basis going forward. My hope is that there will be a change of heart, and perhaps, Ms. Tanden, you could be part of that. We should work together. We have to work together to make it sustainable, to ensure that we're doing the right things, and good ideas come from both sides of the aisle, as we have found out again in the previous 5 COVID-19 packages that we have passed in this Congress. Of course, you also will be responsible, should you be confirmed, for coordinating much of our cybersecurity. And the cyber threats are growing, both to the public sector, our government agencies, but also to the private sector. This massive cyber attack called SolarWinds is an example of that. And OMB's critical coordinating role here is very important to us and the committee, as was mentioned by Chairman Peters. We should also cooperate to build on the economic and regulatory progress we've made over the past several years. We have prioritized reviewing the efficacy of regulations and created processes to ensure that the administrative state is engaged in rigorous cost-benefit analysis. I spoke to Ms. Tanden about this. I know she agrees with cost-benefit analysis, and that's important because it's been one of the reasons we've seen some economic gains, particularly more opportunities in our economy. Going into this pandemic, we had not just relatively low unemployment, but we had the lowest poverty rate since we started keeping track of it back in the 1950s. So we had a number of things going right, and part of it was because of the regulatory changes that helped job creators, particularly small businesses, be able to get more people to work and keep them at work. So the Council of Economic Advisors estimated that after 5 to 10 years, the regulatory approach that was taken over the last several years would raise real incomes by $3,100 a year. I hope the new administration will build on these efforts to reduce the regulatory burden and not unduly expand government interfering in people's businesses and their lives, because again, it was working. A year ago, February, we had the 19th straight month of increases in income of 3% or more on an annualized basis. First time that has happened in a few decades in my home state of Ohio, and very welcome. I hope the new administration and OMB will work with me on lifting the sunset on a bipartisan bill I authored back in 2015 called Fast 41, which helped coordinate the federal permitting process for some of the largest infrastructure projects. It's been a very successful endeavor. It's been a bipartisan endeavor from the start. My hope is we can continue that. Again, this would allow us to gain more good jobs. And our infrastructure, of course, badly needs investment and improvement. So my hope is we can work together on that as well. So Ms. Tanden, I look forward to hearing your thoughts today about these and so many other issues, and want to hear about your goals should you be confirmed as OMB Director. And with that, turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Portman. Well, today we're joined by two of our Senate colleagues who will be introducing Ms. Tanden. First, I'd like to recognize Senator Klobuchar. Senator, welcome to the committee.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Peters. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you, Ranking Member Portman, for those strong words and for your work. And I know together you're going to do an incredible job leading this committee. We all know that the oversight that we're going to see from this very important committee and all the members, including the new members, is going to be so key as we look at what happened January 6th, and most importantly, how we move forward in fighting terrorism, deadly pandemic, cyber attacks, and of course working toward government reform, which this committee does every single day. So it's an honor to appear here. To take on all of these major responsibilities, you need a partner in the Office of Management and Budget who will put our nation's priorities first and your priorities first. I am proud to join you today to introduce my friend Neera Tanden, a woman who is smart, organized, and tenacious. Those are good qualities for this job. If confirmed, she will make history as the first woman of color to lead the Office of Management and Budget. This morning, I want to acknowledge a few people who have seen Neera's compassion and perseverance, and yes, her ability to balance a budget firsthand. That would be her family. I want to introduce you to her husband, Ben, as well as her 18-year-old daughter, Alina, her brother, Raj, and her mother, Maya, who's with us right behind me today. Her 15-year-old son, Jaden, couldn't join us in person, but I know wherever he is, he's brimming with pride. It's an honor to tell you Neera's story. Not only is her story characterized by hard work and determination, but it actually shows the power of the American dream. Neera is the daughter of Indian immigrants and grew up in Bedford, Massachusetts. Raised by her mom, Maya, Neera learned the value of perseverance at a very young age. Determined to succeed, like so many immigrants, Maya put her kids first. And as a single mom, she first relied on food stamps and public housing to make ends meet. Maya then found new footing and began working as a travel agent. forging her family's path to the middle class. It is her mother's work ethic and resolve that all of us see in Neera. And it's those same qualities that I know will serve her well as our next director of the Office of Management and Budget. As she started out as a travel agent, Maya may not have ever thought that her daughter would one day be asked to serve in the cabinet of the President of the United States. But after years of never taking no for an answer and setting high expectations for Neera, somehow we all ended up here today. Maya, Neera, her family, and all of us. Growing up, Neera understood the circumstances of her family's struggle and watched social programs work. Because of that personal connection, she knew from a young age that she wanted to pursue public service. She thrived as a student. After graduating from Bedford High School, she continued her studies at UCLA and then went on to earn her law degree from Yale Law School. I've been honored to call Neera a friend for years. Throughout her career, she has shown a passion for improving people's lives. She brings years of government experience, unmatched policy expertise, and a personal mission to ensure that everyone can follow the American dream like her family did. Neera understands that inscribed in any budget is a set of priorities, choices about ensuring everyone gets a fair shot. She knows that the work of the Office of Budget shapes the lives of millions of American families just like her own. She's an experienced manager who will be ready to take the helm of the Office of Management and Budget on day one. In her near decade at the Center for American Progress, she led teams in promoting bold solutions to 21st century problems, including the pandemic. And no, not everyone in this room will agree with every solution that she's put forth in her career. I don't agree with every solution she's put forth in her career. But what matters, my friends, is her devotion to her country and her ability to do the job. That's why President Biden picked her. Chairman Peters, Ranking Member Portman, you have both identified bolstering the federal coronavirus response as a crucial priority in this session. We all agree with that priority, and I'm confident that this committee will ensure that the tax dollars are used efficiently, and you will have a friend in Neera. As President Biden puts it, she's smart as hell. That maybe was a simpler way to introduce her, but I had to use a few more words. And I think you will find someone that knows what she's doing, who understands the Senate, who worked, by the way, as Senator Clinton's legislative director. And as you know, Senator Clinton's time in the Senate was marked by her bipartisanship, her accessibility, her ability to get things done across the aisle. That is the background that Neera will bring to this office. She will lead from her heart, but she will also forge practical solutions to the immense challenges facing our country. I know all members of this committee can trust her to hear you out, to negotiate when necessary, and to do so in good faith. She will be a phenomenal director, and I urge the committee to support her nomination. Thank you very much, Chairman Peters and Ranking Member Portman. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar, for those remarks. Next, we are joined virtually by Senator Booker, who has recorded a video introduction for us.
Hi to all my colleagues, and of course, Senator Peters and Senator Johnson. Thank you for giving me this, what I consider a really precious opportunity to introduce President Biden's nominee to serve as director of the Office of Management and Budget, Neera Tanden. I want to first just be candid with you all. I have known Neera for decades. I don't like to admit that because it shows that both of us are old, but we go back a very long way. Neera is a friend in the truest and deepest sense of the word. And I want to tell you, when we first met and went to school together, she struck me as someone who had a powerful trifecta. She is a person of deep heart, authentic caring and empathy. She's a person of fierce intellect who I've learned a lot from, even back then in our days of study. And then finally, she's a person who has this spirit, this abundance of love for this nation, its ideals and its principles. And she has lived a life where she has been fiercely adherent to the highest ideals of patriotism, of service, of being there for others. I know that Neera's public career has been not only impressive, but she has lived a life of extraordinary impact. She was involved in both the Clinton and the Obama administrations. She served in the White House, in the Senate, in the Department of Health and Human Services, and most recently, she has led the Center for American Progress, providing critical analysis and policy research that has informed many of my colleagues and my office itself. Part of what has made her so impactful is that to Neera, policymaking is not an academic exercise. It is a powerful force that has deeply personal implications on the lives of millions of people. She understands that the decisions we make all have consequences, and often unintended consequences, and that we and the work we do, which she honors so much, has the potential to change life trajectories and make this nation more real for all of her people. Now, Neera, there's a great poem that is by the Langston Hughes about a mother giving a message to her son. And she says in that poem, the line is, "For me, life ain't been no crystal stair." In other words, life hasn't been easy. Neera's climb to impact and influence has been difficult. Neera was raised by a single mother who immigrated from India like so many others seeking a better life. America was a light unto her nation, in her nation. And Neera's family came here. Neera has said that when her mom could not find work, they had to rely on America's social safety net to keep them afloat. They relied on food stamps. They relied on rental assistance. And because they had the support they needed when they were struggling, Neera's mom was able to get them on their feet, and she got a job, and she bought a house, and she achieved so much of the American dream. But as we all know, the greatest part of the American dream is seeing your children do better than you, go on to heights that you might not have thought possible. As my mom often said, behind every successful child is an astonished parent. Well, Neera, as she went on to college and then law school with the likes of people like me, she has led a life that has given her mother great pride and maybe even a little astonishment. Neera saw firsthand what this country can do when it invests for its people. And in her example before us today, we see what a country that invests in its people can do, can accomplish. As leader of the Office of Management and Budget, Neera will be tasked with overseeing the office responsible for implementing the Biden administration's agenda and making our government work for people. During a time of a dual crisis in public health and the economy, Neera will be asked to help oversee our federal government's response and plan to rebuild and restore. She will be tasked with helping to ensure that the American people are being served by an accountable government, that it is transparent, and that it is truly committed to them. If confirmed, Neera will accomplish this American mission. She will offer the kind of vision that is reflective of her brilliance, of her huge heart, and of her commitment and spirit for this country. She will continue to be truly a public servant and a servant leader. She will lead with empathy. She will lead with skill and understanding for our economy and of our country's challenges. And she will lead with love. She will lead with love of country and all of her citizens. I urge my colleagues on the Homeland Security Committee and in the Senate to swiftly confirm Neera Tanden's nomination. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share with you why I so believe in my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Booker. I have been informed that Senator Booker also wishes to thank Senator Portman. The omission in his recorded video was not intentional. Ms. Tanden, it is the tradition of this committee to swear in witnesses. And so if you will stand and raise your right hand. Senator, do you swear the testimony you will give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated. Ms. Tanden, you may now proceed with your opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Chairman Peters, Ranking Member Portman, and members of the committee. I am humbled and honored to be here today as President Biden's nominee to serve as Director of the Office of Management and Budget. I want to begin by thanking Senators Booker and Senators Klobuchar for their gracious introductions and by recognizing my family, my husband Ben, my daughter Alina, my brother Raj, and my mother Maya, all of whom are here with me, as well as my son Jaden, who is supporting me from his school. I owe my presence here to their love and support, and to the grit and resilience of my mother, an immigrant from India who was left to make it on her own in America with 2 young children after her divorce from my father. Back then, she faced a harsh choice: stay in the United States and rely on the social safety net, or return to India, where she knew her children would face the stigma of divorce. She had faith in this country and made the decision, I believe the courageous decision, to stay. We relied on food stamps to eat, Section 8 vouchers to pay the rent. At school, I remember being the only kid in the cafeteria line who used 10-cent vouchers from the free and reduced lunch program. I remember using food stamps in the grocery store. Within just a few years, my mother found a job, and a few years later, she was earning a middle-class salary. Soon, she was able to buy a home, and eventually, she saw her children off to college and beyond. I spend every day grateful for a nation and a government that had faith in my mother and in me, that invested in our humanity and gave me a fair shot to pursue my potential. As I sit before this committee, I'm mindful that my path in life would never have been possible without budgetary choices that reflected our nation's values, many of them made in the very agency I am now nominated to lead. That recognition and gratitude has been the North Star of my career. I've spent the past 20 years at the forefront of some of our country's most important policy debates. And for the past decade, I've led a major think tank that engages many areas that OMB handles every day, from budget plans to regulatory proposals to efforts to make government more effective and efficient. My experience also extends to both the legislative and executive branches, having served in the United States Senate, at the White House under President Clinton, and at an agency under President Obama. I believe that experience provides me with a strong foundation to lead OMB. I also know that the role of OMB director is different from some of my past positions. Over the last few years, it's been part of my role to be an impassioned advocate. I know there have been some concerns about some of my past language in social media, and I regret that language and take responsibility for it. I understand that the role of OMB director calls for bipartisan action as well as nonpartisan adherence to facts and evidence. OMB will play a vital role in addressing many of the biggest challenges we face, from beating back the virus to delivering aid that will help ensure a strong economic recovery for all families, to ensuring we build back better than before. If I am privileged to serve as the director, I would ensure that OMB uses every tool at its disposal to efficiently and effectively deliver for working Americans, small businesses, and struggling communities. I would vigorously enforce my ironclad belief that our government should serve all Americans, regardless of party, in every corner of the country. I would ensure that our budgets reflect the values of a nation built on hard work, human dignity, common purpose, and boundless possibility. And I would work in good faith with all members of this committee to tackle the challenges Americans are facing, to address duplication, or ineffective programs to be responsive to you and your staff's inquiries and to assist the committee in its important oversight role. Let me finally say this. As a child in line with my mom at that grocery store, feeling shy and a bit embarrassed as my mother used food stamps instead of money, I never dreamed that one day I would be sitting in this august room with great leaders like all of you. I am so incredibly grateful for the opportunities this country has given me, and I am profoundly honored by the possibility to serve and to help ensure we provide real opportunities for those who come after us. Thank you for inviting me before this committee, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Tanden. Before we get started, there are 3 questions that the committee asks of every nominee. So for the record, let me just ask you, and if you'd also respond very quickly to these would be appreciated. First, is there anything that you are aware of in your background that might present a conflict of interest with the duties of the office which you have been nominated?
No, sir.
Second, do you know of anything, personal or otherwise, that would in any way prevent you from fully and honorably discharging the responsibilities of the office to which you have been nominated?
No, sir.
Lastly, do you agree without reservation to comply with any request or summons to appear and testify before any duly constituted committee of Congress if you're confirmed?
I do, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Tanden. Now, I want to turn to the pandemic, clearly on everybody's mind first and foremost. Every day I hear from Michiganders who are struggling to put food on the table, pay their bills, make the ends meet because of this incredible economic and public health crisis that we're in the midst of. President Biden has made it very clear on many, many occasions that we need bold action. Not just action, but bold action to help families and communities who are still hurting. So, Ms. Tanden, my question to you is how important is it to deliver COVID relief immediately for families and small businesses and provide the resources needed by state and local communities to defeat this virus and to reverse this economic crisis?
Thank you so much for your question, Chairman Peters. I think there are really 2 critical issues in front of the country. One is the virus itself, COVID-19, and the second is economic recovery. While the numbers have improved in the last few days, we remain in a dark winter with the virus. And so it is absolutely critical to ensure that we have vaccine distribution at its highest potential. That is important for saving human lives and ending human suffering, but it is also important for us to actually economically recover and recover as aggressively as possible. So the President has put forward the American Recovery Plan, which is designed to address the COVID crisis, ensure that we are distributing the vaccine as effectively as possible, reaching as many Americans as possible, while also addressing particular challenges. As we saw from the unemployment numbers on Friday, the economy is still deeply challenged, and we have 10 million more people unemployed than we did a year ago. That is a lot of human suffering. We also are continuing to see increased small business failures, and that is also a deep challenge going forward. So the American Rescue Plan is really designed to address the virus itself and deal with the human suffering and economic challenges that families are facing every day to speed our economic recovery.
The state of Michigan is working extremely hard right now to deliver support to the struggling families that you mentioned in your answer. But it certainly needs support from the federal government to address this crisis. It's a national crisis, requires a national response, working closely with states. I understand you have some experience working on COVID-19 response at the state level, working in New Jersey. Could you tell the committee a little bit about your work? And from that experience, what are some lessons that we should take?
Thank you, Senator. I was privileged to serve on the New Jersey Restart and Recovery Commission. Its focus was on addressing COVID-19 and economically ensuring that New Jersey recovers. I learned many great lessons while I served on that commission. One is that states bear an incredible responsibility, but it is deeply challenging to have states, in a sense, go this road alone. The virus, does not see any state borders. States are subject to the actions of other states. So it is critical to have a national response to the virus. And it is important that we have a national plan to beat back the virus. States are continuing to see economic challenges, and it's important to have a partner at the federal level who is really working to address the virus. And I think that is one of the reasons why it is important to have a national vaccine plan. States are leading the efforts, but a federal partner that can ensure vaccine distribution is happening everywhere, even in places that are harder to reach. The whole country is better off when everyone is getting vaccinated as quickly as possible.
Well, in that answer, you mentioned a number of challenges that states are facing. Is there one thing that really stands out in your mind as to what they need from the federal government? What would be a priority in your mind?
Well, obviously, states are concerned about resource allocation, and I think we should recognize states are seeing very different issues depending on their own tax base. But almost all states, are seeing rises in spending that they have to make to address the crisis. Spending to shore up hospitals, spending to essentially ensure testing, and spending for vaccines themselves. So I think a partner that recognizes those challenges is an important, a federal partner that recognizes those challenges is something that states across the board throughout the country can look forward to.
Ms. Tanden, communities of color in Michigan, as well as all around the country, have faced disproportionate health and economic impacts as a result of this pandemic. The evidence is clear. It is overwhelming. For example, many communities of color didn't have equitable access to COVID-19 testing or relief for minority-owned small businesses. And now I'm seeing similar issues arise with disproportionately low numbers of Black and Latino Americans receiving the vaccine. If confirmed, how would you approach these inequities and ensure that communities of color have access to vaccines, to relief, and to other assistance that they so desperately need?
Thank you, Chairman. If I am privileged to serve in this role, I would make the equity concerns a real focus. And I think that's the first and foremost step is to understand the data and have a real representation of what's happening, whether it's communities of color lacking access to resources, as you mentioned, both in terms of PPP, but testing, vaccines, really understanding what's happening, what the barriers are, and how we redress those barriers. So I do think it is important as we think through issues like vaccine distribution, making sure that we have distribution in places that have been harder to reach, in communities, urban and rural, where we have less access because we have challenges around rural hospitals, for example. With rural hospitals closing, we do need to take extra steps to make sure that we have vaccine all throughout the country in every corner of every state.
Thank you, Ms. Tanden. I'm going to reserve some of my remaining questions for later, and now turn this over to Ranking Member Portman.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. And Ms. Tanden, again, thank you for taking time to speak with me last week. We had the opportunity to go over a number of different issues, including a bunch of policy issues. Let me focus today at the outset on the issue that many of my Republican colleagues have raised with me. As we've discussed, OMB director has to be able to work with members of Congress on both sides of the aisle. This is true with cabinet officials generally, but specifically with OMB, because you have so many interactions with them, both on the budget and on the oversight responsibilities. And typically, the OMB director is not a partisan in particular, because you have to have these kinds of relationships. I believe that the tone, the content, and the aggressive partisanship of some of your public statements have added to the troubling trend of more incivility and division in our public life. And in your case, I'm concerned that your personal attacks about specific senators will make it more difficult for you to work with them. Just to mention a few of the thousands of negative public statements, you wrote that Susan Collins is, quote, the worst, that Tom Cotton is a fraud, that vampires have more heart than Ted Cruz. You called Leader McConnell Moscow Mitch and Voldemort, and on and on. I wonder specifically, how do you plan to mend fences and build relationships with members of Congress you have attacked through your public statements?
Senator, I very much appreciate that question. I recognize the concern. I deeply regret and apologize for my language and some of my past language. I recognize that this role is a bipartisan role, and I know I have to earn the trust of senators across the board. I will work very aggressively to meet that concern. I know the last 4 years or last few years have been pretty polarizing, and I hope that we can work to address the country's challenges in a bipartisan and nonpartisan manner. I appreciate that it's upon me to prove that to this committee and to members, and I will work as hard to address the concerns of Republican senators as Democratic senators, and will be accountable. I want the OMB to be accountable to Congress and work effectively with you.
There are media reports that during November of 2020, after the election, so late last year, more than 1,000 tweets were deleted from your account. Some of these public statements have been tweets. Are these media reports that you deleted more than 1,000 tweets in November in advance of your nomination accurate? And if so, why did you delete them?
Senator, I appreciate people's concerns about my tweets, and I've regretted them, and I deleted tweets because I regretted my tone, and I've deleted tweets over many months. But for those concerned about my rhetoric and my language, you know, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry for any hurt that they've caused.
So you did delete the tweets. Did you delete them because you believe you might be nominated for this job or another job?
I deleted tweets over many months because I regretted the tone of my tweets.
Okay, but specifically after the election, you deleted 1,000 tweets according to media reports. I take it from what you're saying today that's accurate. Is that true?
I don't actually know, but I can completely concede the point.
Okay, and I guess the question is, you know, is that the right thing to do to go back and try to cover what you had said, given that you might be in a different position, which would be a nomination for a cabinet level job? With the removal of more than 1,000 tweets, there's still a lot of harsh partisan tweets on your account. I found through my staff, there are still 9 pages of tweets about Senator Ted Cruz, for example. How did you choose which tweets you wanted to delete and which ones you wanted to keep on your account?
Senator, I mean, I just thought of some of my language and deleted my tweets, but I would also just say again that to the extent people are hurt by my language, I deeply apologize.
Okay, well, let's move on. Talk about regulatory reform for a moment. We got to talk about this quite a bit on our call. And as you know, the Regulatory Accountability Act has been bipartisan legislation in the past that we've tried to promote as a way to create more jobs and to provide some relief, particularly for smaller businesses. When you were president of the Center for American Progress, you called the Regulatory Accountability Act, quote, a license to kill, among other harsh characterizations. Again, a number of public statements. Can you talk about that? Why did you think that this legislation, which again, when you made that statement at the time, we had Democrats and Republicans on board. Do you still hold those views, and why did you say that?
Senator, I believe a fellow at CAP used that language. I personally did not use that language. I am the CEO of the Center for American Progress, so I am responsible for what it puts forth, but I did not call it, I did not use that language. So I would say on the issue of regulatory reform, we want to get the balance right. Regulations do need to address the public welfare, but they also, we should continue to use cost-benefit analysis, and I look forward to working with you on regulatory reform and other issues and on concerns around regulations that you may have.
And cost-benefit analysis, as you know, is the core of RAA. It also deals with independent agencies. Do you think independent agencies should be more accountable to OMB and to OIRA?
Well, I think the relationship between the Office of Management and Budget and the Executive Office of the President and independent agencies is a different one from other agencies. So I appreciate the concerns raised about the regulatory process with independent agencies, but I do want to recognize that independent agencies
increasingly regulations are coming from these agencies that affect
rulemaking process, and EO 12866 is a still very important rule or a executive order, and so the question really is, one question, not the only question, but a question is whether OMB should be implementing cost-benefit analysis with the independent agencies, but that doesn't take away the importance of cost-benefit analysis for rulemaking.
I'm over my time. I'll be back in the second round. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Portman. Now I'll recognize Senator Johnson for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Tanden, welcome. Appreciated the 30-minute phone call we had, and we talked a little bit about the GOOD Act, which passed this committee twice, was put into regulation by the Trump administration. It was eliminated immediately by President Biden now in his executive orders. Did you get to the bottom of exactly what the thinking was on that?
Senator, as a nominee, I wasn't part of the process, and we did discuss what was behind it. I haven't been able to discern that.
Okay.
I would just say that transparency in guidance is an important principle and one that I think we should uphold.
Okay, appreciate that. Real quick, in terms of Senator Portman's questions on the deleted tweets, did you have any help deleting those tweets? Did the Office of the Transition advise you on that? You just did that personally?
Yeah, nobody advised me
at
all.
As director of OMB, speaking of regulations and the Administrative Procedures Act, do you believe it's responsibility of the director of OMB to ensure that the Administrative Procedure Act is followed with new regulations being implemented?
Yeah, it is my belief that they should follow the APA.
Okay. Because this is the Committee on Homeland Security Government Affairs, we did an awful lot of oversight on the border and the crisis we have had really since I would consider DACA was passed. DACA was ruled by the Supreme Court as violating the Administrative Procedures Act, and it hasn't gone well ever since. I've got a chart here I'd like to provide just a quick little history lesson before I ask you a couple questions. Prior to the implementation of DACA, we were probably averaging 2,000 to 3,000 unaccompanied children coming across the border illegally and being apprehended per year. It took a while for the coyotes to communicate that the policy had changed in the U.S., but I believe DACA was the catalyst that created what President Obama referred to in 2014, the first peak here, as a humanitarian crisis. That was the time frame, by the way, when then Deputy Secretary Mayorkas was instrumental not only in forming DACA, but also setting up the facility at McAllen, Texas, that had the chain link fences that folks on the other side of the aisle always refer to as cages. That was done in the Obama administration. That humanitarian crisis caused the Obama administration to do things like family detention, and it worked. You can tell the illegal immigration came down in terms of unaccompanied children in red and family units in blue. Unfortunately, a court reinterpreted the Flores decision and included accompanied children as well. Again, it takes a little while for that to be communicated to the coyotes, and we ended up with a further surge. President Trump got elected in 2017, dedicated to controlling the border, and the border, again, we had far fewer people coming into this country being apprehended, coming in here illegally. But again, when people took President Trump to court and his actions to secure the border proved he was unable to really implement those things, we ended up with a crisis, far greater crisis, culminating in May of 2019, where we had more than 3,000 people, unaccompanied children and family units, come across the border illegally and being apprehended. They basically turned themselves in per day. That's a caravan per day. You throw in single adults, is over 4,000 people per day. But then the Trump administration enacted policies, including building the fence, MPP, and you can see prior to COVID hitting, we were getting the border back under control, which I personally think is a good thing. I appreciate your story. I appreciate legal immigration. It's made this country strong. We can't have illegal immigration, certainly not at these levels. So I think my question is, now that President Biden is in